And
And
we are live. My bad.
no, hey, do your thing. And we are live. Hey, everybody, welcome to Taralyn, Michelle, and Billy Wroe Live. Today, we're going to be talking about fear as fruit. So, you know what? Let's go ahead and get right into it right now. So, that's what happens when you chill with Billy Rowe and he's used to hitting everything up all the time. Guess what, Billy?
Hey,
I
it's
can
your
hit
show.
it up.
Your name is first. You go do your thing, girl. Do your thing.
Oh, you're right, because my name is first.
Mm-hmm.
What's up, Rudy? Hey, everybody. Welcome to Taralyn, Michelle, and Billy Rowe Live. Roll. How you doing?
Doing good. I'm in the trenches right now in life. I'm working hard. Started a new job this week, and let me tell you, woo! It is a whole new world. You know, guess I'm the new Aladdin since that's a controversial thing having different characters as Disney characters.
That part.
Anyway, so but I'm doing well. How are you doing, sis?
I am doing phenomenal, phenomenal. Great week. I think this is going to be a great show ahead. Aladdin, since you landed your carpet, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and get right into it. But you know what? Fear as fruit is what our topic is going to be tonight. And typically, we'll both start off the show by telling a little bit about what came to our mind when we thought about the topic. So tonight, I know you had me start first last time, but I'll go ahead and start first this time simply because Billy and I, we have a whole list of different ideas and topics that we do. And when we were in the green room, Billy was like, this is you. Why he eating chicken? So I'll
Hey,
go ahead.
really gonna put my diet on blast.
So I will go ahead and start the topic off for tonight. So what I was thinking about when I thought of fear as fruit is we oftentimes have heard, or maybe some of us have even said, talk about those seeds that we plant within our life, and those seeds having to go through a process of the germinating, whatever, the feeding, the nourishing, all of those different things before that seed that we plant becomes something is brought into fruition and it's ready to harvest. But I think that from the perspective of a coach, when I think about fear, I think a lot of the times that's something that folks will run from, folks will try to get around, folks will try to avoid. But what if some of the areas of our life that we fear the most are actually meant to be drawn from? We can glean different seeds from that moment in fear that we can plant, and then we start to do the work to be able to nourish and cultivate, and that seed that was once fear turns into something fantastic on the other side. So that's what I was thinking about when I thought about this particular topic. What about you, Ro? What came to mind for you?
Man, this is interesting because this we're on two different spectrums of the same thought.
I can't wait.
So when I heard fear as fruit, I actually thought about the fruit not rolling too far from the tree
Mm.
and the ability for I guess the best fruit I can use because I understand the fruit is the apple. An apple can fall from the tree, roll from the tree. You can pick that apple up and you can eat it, and you can actually consume the entire apple. However, parts of the apple, the seeds of the apple, are toxic, and if you eat them in mass quantities, you can poison your system. And so when I started thinking about this topic, fear as fruit, I started thinking about not just how the apple can fall and land and be taken away from the tree, but how it can fall and sit at the tree, and then it can become compost to actually feed the tree. The toxic parts and all can become compost to actually feed the tree. So very much the seed concept, but how we can take an entire situation, and honestly, a devastating situation. And where I am today, I can honestly say it was derived from a devastating situation for me at that time in my life. We can take that devastating situation, use that situation as compost to then fertilize the tree to produce better quality fruit. And though the apple tree is going to continually produce apples, we can choose to do different things with those apples besides let them sit on the ground and rot, besides collecting all the seeds and eating them or whatever it may be. I think that that's what this topic really means to me, is it's how do we extract the good out of sometimes what can be the negative.
I like it. So extracting the good from the negative and also taking negative aspects of negative and repurposing that and turning it into something else.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
like it. I like it. So in thinking about extracting the good from the negative, that makes me think about so many different instances throughout life where, let's say we have a particular goal that we're trying to reach, this space that we're, and I don't know if any, I'm going to assume that a lot of you are like me in that when I'm thinking about goals, I go immediately to the end game. I go immediately to the big, vivid picture. And then we all know that there's that journey, lots of different things that happen before we get to that big, vivid picture. So, how many of us have had that goal in mind? And because you have that goal in mind, you see how you believe the journey should be. But then all of a sudden, the journey starts to look completely and totally different than what you imagined. And because it looks different, it could actually shake your confidence in actually reaching that goal, because now this journey is becoming something that is unrecognizable to you, something that's probably uncomfortable because what you imagine and what you recognize, you already formulated a way to navigate it. But if it's starting to take on the look of something that is not familiar to you or that you did not imagine, being able to stand in a space that is completely and totally unknown can feel crazy sometimes. So, if that's something that you can relate to, Coach Rowe, what would you say about maybe some tools or even a mindset for having situations that turn out to be ones that don't look like we think they should look? They start to shake the inside of us, but then being able to center and extract good from an unknown that was once known.
Mm. I think for me at least, it comes to trusting the process, trusting previous processes that may have been similar, and also trusting your instincts, not just one, but all of them. It's easy to become emotionally engulfed in the uncertainty that negative situations can bring up. It's almost like when you talk to somebody who's been in a bad relationship numerous times with various people, they begin to question and say, well, what is it about me that is attracting this type of person?
Mm.
And it could be as something as simple as well, what it is about you is that you're not trusting your instincts. When your instincts say, hey, wait a minute, not for me. I mean, going back to the conversation that you and I were having earlier today about, asking those deeper level questions in interacting with people, not just accepting the moment as the moment, but being willing to say, okay, this is the moment we're in right now. I'm interested, you're interested. Great. Okay, that's an easy moment to be in because we both have interests. But then
Right.
when you begin to extrapolate what that looks like in the future, how do we get there and what does that look like? And in that moment, are we as equally as comfortable as we are in this moment that we're in right now? Or are not even as equally as comfortable? Or are we even capable to grow to that moment in the future? And so for me, I think it's about this trust walk that we have to, I don't want to say have to, that we learn to walk with ourselves. We learn to accept, I mean, I talked about this in the book, accept that we failed before, accept that things have been toxic and negative before, and we're still here and we've overcome them. And so our ability to overcome them again is not, it's not unfeasible for us to perceive that we would be able to overcome them again should they arise again. So for me, it's about really learning how to trust myself, how to trust the process, and understand. I mean, from even a spiritual standpoint, all things worketh for the good of those that believeth. So
Come
for
on.
me, from that spiritual aspect, it kind of moves me out. It doesn't mean that I'm not shaken. It doesn't mean that sometimes my legs aren't trembling as I'm walking on water. But what it does mean is that I believe that everything that I am learning, even in this difficult moment, is designing and setting me up for the next moment. And so that's where I'm learning to just trust that process, trust that intuition, trust those instincts, and be able to pull that trust back to, or not pull, I'm going to say push that trust and belief back to the forefront. Because I feel like what happens is when we become shaky, we begin to move that trust back and allow fear to take the center stage. What it's doing, what I do is when I'm pushing that trust back forward and that intuition and belief back forward, is I'm saying, yeah, I understand that the fear is there. The fear is not going anywhere. It's not going away, but I'm choosing what I want to intentionally focus on. What about for you in those types of situations?
I love that you spoke on trust, but also too, I don't think that we spend enough time giving ourselves credit for even the littlest things that we've learned and even the smallest steps of progression that we've made. You can't have I don't believe that you can have a catastrophic situation where you survive it and you took nothing away from it. I think that sometimes we're looking unrealistically at where we expect for ourselves to be emotionally, physically. If it's a thing that the situation that you go through, maybe it's somehow shook up your circumstance where you live. It could be employment, situation with kids, be it another parent, be it some folks just having a difficult time. Maybe the state got involved. It could be many different things in your life in which it could just really be just shaken to the core. No matter what the situation is, if you were able to survive it and sustain or even move forward, even if it's just a tiny step, really taking a moment to reflect about the situation and what you could have gotten from it. You got something, you had to have gotten something. But the thing is, if it's not something huge or something that's a monumental step, then we'll spend more time focusing on the pain involved in the situation, the inconvenience involved in the situation. If you feel judgment from others, we'll spend a lot of time focused on that as opposed to what we must have gleaned from it to be able to take a step forward and to still be standing. Even if we're not standing, if even if you're not on your feet, you on your knees, you on something.
Right.
So to have credit for that. For those of you who are just tuning in, thank you so much for tuning in. The topic today is fear as fruit. If you want to join us here on the virtual stage, all you got to do is follow the link right there in the chat. Join us up here. And also, too, if you're here, do us a favor and share, share, share. The more, the merrier here with Taralyn, Michelle, and Billy Wroe live. So, yeah, I think that one of the things that it took me a long time to get to a space to be able to do is, give myself credit. Those little atta girls. It means something just to continue to push, 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 grind, 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 and never take a moment to pause and take a look back and see how far you've come. It kind of makes it hard to continue to fuel forward without that. So I think the trust factor that you mentioned, and also to acknowledgement of even the smallest wins, I think can take us a very long way when it comes to taking those aspects of fear and turning it into fruit, seeds that blossom into fruits within our life. So for
Mhm.
you, I'm wondering, from the perspective of a man raising black boys, I parenting is hard already, but I think bringing up sons is, especially men of color, young men of color, young boys of color, is extremely challenging because sometimes with some of the different things that they face out in the world, and then also too how society has a different standard for men when it comes to expressing emotions, when
Mhm.
it comes to processing some of the things that they feel, how that's supposed to look, that being attached to manhood, how manly you are or are not, based on how you navigate those things. So, as a father, you going through your own journey as a man, but then also to raising what are now, young men. May as well say your boys are growing up, they're getting up out. We got one already out of there.
Right.
what is it? What has it been like for you to try to find balance in teaching them what true manhood is and how to deal with fear, how to deal with anxiety, and also too how to take those things and turn those things into fruits within their life? What is that? How has that journey been? And was that something that was challenging for you? Had you gotten to a space with them where you were ready to know how to support them in that way in their life?
Mm. Yeah. So I'm going to answer the second part first.
Okay.
Um, I think it's this way with all parenting. I think that we are all sometimes fearful of the guidance that we're giving our children, knowing that we have the best in mind for them, wanting the best for them, wanting to see them thrive, but not really given a solid handbook on how to manifest that in their lives, as their guardian, as their parent. Um, that is something that I continue to struggle with, is because you're only so many steps ahead on the journey. Granted, I'm decades ahead of them, but I am still maturing and growing in my own right.
Yeah.
And so trying to give them that guidance requires for me to look back and reflect while still trying to move forward. It's very difficult. But one of the things that I've tried to instill in all of my sons is that at the end of the day, you can have anything you want to have, you can do anything you want to do, you can be anything you want to be. The question is are you willing to do the work? If you're not willing to do the work, then those are wishes. They sound good. They may be great ear candy if you're trying to talk to a young lady or trying to convince somebody to hire you, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to do the work, you're just making wishes. And so that is where I've really tried to focus, because there's so many other things that I can focus on. Okay, well, hey, this is the standard that's going to be for you because you're an African American young boy, versus this is the standard that's going to be for your peers who are not African American young boys. This is the expectation that of what your personality is going to be like versus what your personality actually is. These are things that I encounter as a man, especially as a Black man in America. These are the things that I encounter on a regular basis. People are surprised that I'm articulate. I'm like, what are we surprised about? I mean, I could either be articulate or not be articulate. And how many people fit into that category? All of us. Like, so what are we surprised about that I'm articulate? I'm 50% of the odds in this game of either I'm going to be articulate or not.
Right.
And so the one thing in doing the work that I really try to raise my boys up on doing is knowing the stereotypical information about you, not necessarily subscribing. Knowing and subscription are two different things. And
Yeah.
then continually confusing the stereotype,
Mm,
continually disrupt,
mm,
just mess it all up, make them wonder like, dang, I thought, and then it wasn't, because you thought without getting to know me.
exactly.
And so when it comes to that fruit of fear, that's not even a fear that I have about my sons. It's a fear that the stereotype has created about my sons, a fear
Right.
that the stereotype has created about me. And so if that is the case, my job is to not combat the stereotype by attacking the stereotype. I didn't create the stereotype. Yeah, I didn't even manifest the stereotype. So
Mm,
because I didn't create nor manifest the stereotype, I'm not going to invest my energy there. I'm going to invest my energy in creating a contrast that is so disruptive that you have to inwardly go in and look at your fears and decide if that's a fear you want to continue to nurture, continue to ingest, or if it's a fear that you want to let go and allow it to become that I just lost the word, the mulch, the compost. Thank you. My
mhm.
mind. I was like, it's somewhere in there. That is the fear that you allow to become the compost to help grow a new tree or a new thought process. So that's how I've interacted with my sons. Um,
I like that.
I do want to go back for 1 second, because
Mhm.
I feel like there is something in the trust and the acknowledgement of fears. And I want to ask you if your thoughts are that by trusting yourself and acknowledging fears, are you better? Are you placing yourself in a better space to, I, I'm going to say, either nurture those fears because you're trusting that maybe the fear is real and this is something that I should be aware of and I've acknowledged it. So now I'm focused on the fear. Do you feel like it can become a slippery slope that you end up hyper focused on the fear and not so much on the actual fruit that you can gain from the experience?
It could become a slippery slope if you see fear as something to fear. I see fear as opportunity. I see fear as a necessary to challenge me to get to the next rung on the ladder in my life. Fear serves a purpose. I think that I think fear works like this. I think I see it two different ways. I always my acronym for fear is falsehoods emphasized and amplified by regret. Falsehoods emphasized and amplified by regret. And I say that because a lot of the fears that we have are based on our PTSD from something that happened way back when. We'll have, if you've ever had food poison before someplace, it could have been 15 years ago, but every time you see that place, you have that reaction that you had when you got the food poison 15 years ago. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? You don't forget something that is taxing like that to you emotionally, physically, spiritually. So if you look at fear as something that's meant to trip you up and to keep you running in the opposite direction, then absolutely it can become a slippery slope. But what if we always talk about leveling up? We always talk about growing. We always talk about becoming stronger. We always talk about exceeding our own expectations and realizing who we are from a spiritual perspective, who we are and who we were created to be by the creator. Well, that can't happen if there's nothing around you pulling against what you're moving toward. So I see fear as opportunity always. I see fear as necessary components to make clear a lot of the unknown. I see fear as a big sledgehammer to bust down the different corridors within me that I didn't even know exist. If we think about ourselves as multifaceted, which we many of us do, there are so many different facets to us. Okay, think about those facets if each one had a door blocking you to be able to go into that facet. There are some aspects of our being, just like they talk about with our brain, we only use a small portion of our brain. There are some aspects of our being that we have yet to identify, just like there are of all of the creatures that we have names for, there are many that they haven't named yet, millions. There are so many different unknowns still, yet we tend to work, focus and flow within this small sphere, this bubble that we know. And so fear is an opportunity for you to sit back or to push forward. And when you push forward, then you're taking that imaginary sledgehammer to a corridor of your being that you didn't know exists, or maybe you do know that it exists, but he or she is much stronger than what you give them credit for. If you're never pushed and it's never tested, then how would you know? You
Mhm.
know? And so that's how I see fear. I was talking to a friend before I got on this show today, and he was talking about when he was in college. He went to college and he was in this classroom and turned in this paper in this writing class and got the first F of his life. He said he was shocked. He was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, ugh, this teacher, she gotta be racist." This is back in the day. Him and some of his friends, they got these terrible grades, and he was like, "Yeah, no, this has got to be all her." Until it was this Afrocentric chocolate chick that was in the class, got the Angela Davis fro and everything, all palpable people. Okay, she got an A on her paper, and when he showed her his paper, she was like, "Who? Where the heck did you go to school? Who
What?
taught you? Who taught you this?" You know what? They let you in here. It was kind of
Right.
like that, right? So when he saw her grade and he got that coming from her, he said it was an ego shot, true indeed. But he had a choice. It was the devastation, the unexpected, just punch in the gut of this grade. And man, so now I could flee. and I could go to another school because that would be easier. It would take me a little bit more time, but I could just go to another school because I'm not liking how this is feeling. Or I could go through this. I could walk through this. This isn't about racism because she did it.
Right.
So now, because he chose to walk through it, he got to learn something. He took a sledgehammer to a corridor of his being and learned something about him. And he ended up being the A student, one of the A students in the class, and standing at the front of the class when the teacher's saying, you can go from an F to an A.
Mm.
But what if he had have just walked away from that because it was too hard, or it was an ego shot, or use whatever other justification that a lot of the times we do? So, you know, when it comes to fear, we get to choose how we want to use it. But I contend that it serves a divine good to get you where you want to be and for you to get to learn things about yourself that otherwise you wouldn't be challenged to know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the aspect of fear being a boundary, um, boundaries are not just designed to keep us safe. Because for a long, I mean, we go back to like the instinctual fear of something is in the bush, it could jump out and attack me at any time. I'm going to go back home where there's light and there's other people. And that was a survival tactic.
Yeah.
Um, and so that in the aspect of fear, it does create that boundary. Hey, I'm not going to go beyond this because I sense that there's danger on the other side of that. But fear also can be a limiting boundary that once you get over on the other side of the gate, you're like, oh man, why haven't I been here before? I've
Yeah.
actually experienced that in moving to Utah, where when I first moved here, it wasn't that I was afraid of moving to Utah. It was just like, okay, I'm moving to Utah, about to be out here. I don't know none of these people. I don't have any bearings as to what the areas I should be in, what areas I shouldn't be in. I didn't have any kind of I was at in the space in Utah. But
Mhm.
now, because I've crossed, I mean, I crossed over a state and then came into another state because I've moved so far from California. Now I'm understanding what's on the other side of the barrier of the state that I grew up in, and
Yeah.
how much more liberated I feel being able to know that not only did I leave my home state and thrive in a state that I've never been in before, um, it creates a confidence that if I choose to leave Utah, I can do it again. I could do everything that I thought I couldn't do while I was in California. Once I left California, now I know that I can do everything all over again. I can build a network. I can get gainfully employed. I can make income. I can do investments. I can do every single thing that I thought for at a time in my life, I thought that I could only do in California. Now I know, because I've crossed that barrier, that I can do it anywhere. I don't even care if I don't speak the language. I can do it
Right.
anywhere.
Right. Definitely.
What's going on, JC?
What's going on, JC? Let me see. What's up, Tammy? Thank you so much for tuning in. Charita, thank you so much, you guys, for tuning in. Yeah, I think that those challenges, they're just that. They're just that. It's just something that if we allow ourselves to step into it, yeah, absolutely you could fail.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say you failed 10 times. On the 11th, you have some wisdom that you've taken with you from the previous failures
Right.
that you can use to
Some not-in
possibly
wisdom.
exactly to cross the threshold to the other side of it. And so I think that just perspective on anything that we do is so very important. It really does boil down to it'll be whatever we see.
Mm.
And understand that even if we see it, that doesn't mean that because we see it now is going to be right now. The goal is to continue to see it, regardless of what happens to be along the way. That's the hard part, to continue to see what you want and hold on to that in the face of everything truly messed up that's happening.
Mm.
That's the hard part. The longevity of our sight is what will ensure whether or not we'll get to a certain point. And then even with that, I want to say too that sometimes there are a lot of things that we see, but those things we don't know when we're looking at them that they're not necessarily for us. That may not be the path that our creator has for us. I think that even in situations like that, there are always breadcrumbs along the way. Sometimes we can get the horse with blinders and we only want to continue to see what we thought we saw. But if we're paying attention to the breadcrumbs along the way, if you're fixated or focused on something that's not meant for you, then God's going to let you know that. And I think just going back to what you said about having that trust in ourselves, we always know when we need to pivot. It's just sometimes we'll choose not to because we have the blinders on.
Right.
We'll just make the choice that, yeah, I really feel like I should, but I don't want to. I really want that. So I'm going to ignore that. I would just encourage anyone who's watching, listening, even catching the replay. If you're catching the replay, drop in the replay, flexibility. Drop it in the chat. Flexibility. We have to be malleable. We have to know that what we see is only a portion of God's story for all of us in our life. It's only a segment.
True.
It's only a segment. And sometimes we can see certain points of our journey much earlier than when we're actually meant to act on it. We had a conversation, it's been a while ago, Ro, where you and I were talking about, I believe it was a dream that you may have had. And in that dream, I think it was you had a feeling that you should do something or move on something. And I was like, well, I mean, yeah, that was just a dream. Maybe it's just a feather in your cap, but things are going phenomenal. Why would you switch up now? I mean, you may feel it, but does it make sense with where you are and what are the what's life around you telling you? That conversation, when we had that conversation, it was funny because you and I shared that, and then it was probably a few weeks later I had the exact same thing. I mean, I literally woke up feeling like I needed to do something with this information that I got in this dream, and then I remembered the conversation that we had, and I was like, no, not always.
Right. Maybe it's just a detour.
Exactly.
One of the things, and I you know what, I'm going to see if I can share my screen.
What you got?
We're going to try a new technology.
Hey.
we go see if it works. But first I have like so many screens up on my screen at all times.
I bet.
So I need to close some screens before I do this. I didn't think that through. Sorry.
You know what, too, and I know that's fine. And while you're doing that, I wanted to I wanted to ask you today. Yeah, I know. I wanted to ask you on air. Now, this conversation we had earlier. You already know when we were talking about the article that I sent you, and we were talking about men and stability, peace. That whole situation, trying to get together how that all fits. Yeah, I kind of want to talk about that a little bit near the end of this. I wasn't even, I'm just going to throw it on you, but I said, no, I'm going to be nice.
Well, at least you sent me a video clip or a clip before.
Right. Just throw some, you're like, wait a minute, what does that have to do with anything? What
all right. All right. I figured out how to share this really quick. So just kind of going into what you were saying about having the flexibility. This was actually the thought of the day today. And this was what I had posted. I put, learning to operate in grace unlocks the permission for us to do the things that we were once afraid would fail. And then I go on, you can't see it here. I don't know how big you can see it on your screen. It says, I have been unkind to myself regarding my failures. In doing so, I found that I was willing to take fewer risks. It wasn't until I began to focus on giving grace to myself that I accepted failure as a part of my personal journey. In doing so, I realized that often we walk away from opportunities because we fear the punitive criticism we will enact upon ourselves.
Yeah, I saw this on LinkedIn today. Yeah. Yes.
I think about what you were saying is about fear being that opportunity. And it's interesting that would be the thought of the day today, and thinking about how in the past I was hypercritical about the failures and the fears of failures. I was just hypercritical about them. So it was like, I don't want to risk it because if I risk it and it comes up short, it's going to be a bash session for like 5 weeks that I'm still, Billy, you were stupid for doing that. Why did you make that decision? All these different things. And what I've actually found is now that I am so much more willing to give myself grace, it almost, the fear now isn't like, oh well, I'm going to beat myself up. The fear now is like, well, are you giving yourself too much grace and not really taking into considerations the types of decisions that you're making, which in essence is a reverse psychological fear of now you're giving grace. And so I think about the opportunities that maybe I have missed out on in my life earlier on in life because of that fear of failure and that fear of self-retaliation, if that is a such concept, for making those poor choices or those poor decisions. But at the end of the day, and this is what the Wednesday word will be about tomorrow, is at the end of the day, right or wrong, you got to make a choice. Right or wrong. At the end of the day, you don't make a choice, you made a choice.
Absolutely.
And that choice can be right or wrong.
Exactly. The choice is going to be made. So you may as well lead the charge in determining what the choice is going to be, because opting out is still making a choice. I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
And then also too, there's another thing just in listening to you talk about this, when you said the fear of actually making that decision and beating yourself up. What's interesting about that is I know your circle. If you had made that exact same decision, oh, and Casual, I'm glad that you're here today and this is resonating with you. Welcome, welcome. Your circle, you had made that same decision and they knew about it. You wouldn't have gotten the support that you would have gotten, and the different ways to look at that thing that you would have gotten before you had even taken the opportunity to beat up Billy. I point that out because I think that's so very important. The enemy wants us to believe that making a choice and falling short, and let's just be clear, falling short by our own standard, because again, that's a perspective thing. Failure is subjective, really. You get to choose that title, you get to wear that title if that's what you want or not. You know what I'm saying? So we'll take and we're our own worst critic. We'll put ourselves through the ringer over something not turning out the way that we feel like it should. When if we opened ourselves up to people around us, like-minded people, and shared in some of our disappointments, you'd be amazed at how much support you would get, a broadening of your thought, some different ways for when you get back on the saddle to go back at it. I think it's so important for us to connect ourselves to community, and instead of the old mindset of, oh, well, keep your stuff to yourself and don't tell anybody. Well, I'm not saying just go tell anybody, just any random person, because hurt people, they really do. But I think that putting your energy out there, especially when you're living in your authentic self, you're in an authentic space of putting good and service and positivity into the world, we attract who we are, we attract what we are. I think that allowing ourselves to have the courage to be a part of communities and letting people know what we have going on is so very important, because then that right there disrupts that negative pattern of judging ourselves and punishing ourselves, because you have people around who see you beyond any flaw that you see. A lot of the flaws that we see, only we see them. People
Right.
around us, they see the best in us. They don't see those things. So when you have those people around and sharing in some of the things that's going on with you, then now you have people to help circumvent some of the negative behavior that you have. And not only are they adding to the journey forward, but in disrupting that pattern, it'll help to erase that part of your being that goes about this destructive pattern of just mommy dearest in yourself. Look, I'm no more wire hangers on me. It's you doing it. It's just listen, you gotta be random sometimes.
Really, really quick. Bringing up from the chat, JC Jennifer Chambers says sometimes that community is not family.
Yes.
Taralyn, you are speaking the truth about creating a community of like-minded individuals.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We have. Ooh, girl, you know what? See, JC, all we need is wine and time. We are so here all the time. I love that girl. I love you, sis. I do. But it's so completely and totally true. I think we just default to family Because even if your family is just crazy, you know what to expect with that crazy. We don't like the unknown. We will continue to gravitate toward dysfunction because at least we know it.
Right.
And that is just toxic and insane. We don't have to, but we
I'm
should
so
be,
glad you're picking that up.
we're picking it up. We're doing it together. But I think opening ourselves up to that unknown and understanding that within us, we have the tools. These things exist to elevate us. Opening ourselves up to the unknown can give us more peace, more security, more confidence, more vision and perspective. You actually have different people who are feeding into you so you're not being depleted. People who allow you to be abstract, air quotations, in the way that you think and how you feel and how you view life, and they actually are excited about hearing something new and seeing a different facet of you, a different corridor of you that maybe they hadn't seen before you started to share in whatever this endeavor is. I think it's so very important for us to allow ourselves to step into this new realm of open, uninhibited possibilities based on who we are today and not who somebody knew us to be 20, 30 years ago. That person doesn't even exist anymore. So when you defaulting to family because you know it, then you're actually choosing to stay stuck in a person that you are no longer, and then actually quenching the fire for the person that you are and who you're continuing to aspire to be. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's just so much freedom in going for the unknown. With the known, you already know what to expect. With the unknown, you could be creating something that's completely and totally extraordinary in your life.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting when my old anger management counselor, she is an amazing woman.
I
But
bet.
she would always call it um, familiar shit. That's what she would
There
call
you
it.
go.
Familiar shit.
Hmm.
It stinks. It's nasty. Nobody wants it, but you'll stick with it because you know it and it's familiar.
Hmm.
And oftentimes, I love that at the end you say you are quenching the fire of who you truly are designed to be
Yep.
because you won't let go of the familiar to grasp greatness. Like that's the thing is we think it's unknown, but the progressive state and the evolution that we experience over the course of our lives, it is all propelling us towards greatness. And so our lack or inability or our lack of desire or inability to being willing to let go of what is familiar because of the comfort that it provides
Yeah.
comes at a cost.
Toxic comfort
Toxic comfort.
because shit stinks.
Ooh,
Like,
first
yeah,
one
that's
smelt it, dealt
because I know this.
it.
That's like, and that's so true when you think about it. It's so funny. This is random, but the stink, as opposed to being out in public or somebody walking by and poop, that just
Mhm.
make you want to tear a joint up. That's some that's some unknown stench.
Well, and then there's the other aspect of that is because it becomes so familiar, you become smell death or blind.
Yeah,
You all
yeah,
of a sudden you can't smell it anymore because
right. It's
it's
normal.
so comfortable that it has become a part of you.
Somebody walk in and like, you all don't smell that.
Right. Tell me you ain't walked into a house before, but like,
What's going on here?
is that just me or what are we doing here?
Right.
So, or don't play if you leave your house long enough and you come back, you be like, dang, my house smell like this right now. What?
Questioning the kids, going through closets. What's going on?
Right. But I
Yeah,
mean, you think about you leave for a 2-week trip and you forgot to take the trash out.
exactly. Yeah.
You
So
come back into your house and you immediately know something is off.
right.
That's how getting away from familiar spaces is as well. You leave long enough. When you come back, you know something is off. It's
Right.
no different than when I come back to California. When I was in California, I thought California was normal. I was like, man, this is normal. This is life. This is how California is. But leaving for an extended period of time and coming back, people are constantly saying, hey, when are you moving back? I'm not.
Never.
I'm not. I
Right.
have no desire to come back.
Yeah.
Nothing against California, but it just didn't make sense for the life that I wanted to live. I am thriving living outside of California. I was struggling living inside of California. And now I can move back to California and be living a decent life based on the income that I'm generating. However, I have no desire to give additional tax revenue to the state that I don't have to necessarily live in. So those are the things for me when I think about that familiarity and that just like the familiarity of beating myself up, I was so familiar with it that it was like I couldn't taste a different flavor of trying new things because it was going to come at the cost of me having to beat myself up.
Mhm.
Now I'm at the space where I'm like, I'll try. If worst case scenario, if I fail, we'll do our best to get back up, dust it off, and keep it pushing. That's all we can do. Even in this new role that I'm in this new organization, it's like, hey, I left an organization where I had a pretty good reputation for myself. I was not being forced out the door. Nobody was like, thanks heavens, Billy is gone. It was like, hey, we understand you're taking a new opportunity. Now I'm in a space where I'm now proving myself again. But the difference about being in this space is when my moments of imposter syndrome come up and say, you're not really about this life. You're not about to do this. I say, no, I'm really going to do what I've done the last 3 times. Is I'm going to come in, I'm going to show up, I'm going to become a subject matter expert, and I'm going to create value that is felt throughout the organization. That's what I'm going to do. Why? Because I've done it before.
I love that. I love to use it. It's just as simple as speaking your truth in the face of fear. That's a perfect example of what we've been talking about. Fear steps up. You say, yeah, nah, bruh. And you decide this here what we're doing. And that's what we do.
Right.
You know, that's what happens. Oh, well, yep, that's it. You know what? I thank everybody for tuning in, that's tuned in so far. If you haven't already, share. If you haven't already, share the show for us. We definitely appreciate that. Now, we have a few minutes left.
I knew you was going to try to get back to this.
I ain't trying. I'm doing. At least I gave you a heads up. Okay. So, y'all, this is a little bit of a pivot to the left, right? So I sent Billy an article earlier. I saw, or actually, it was a post earlier that I saw on LinkedIn. It was kind of confusing to me, the concept. I understood what was written, but anyway, y'all, it went a little something like this. In this particular post, they were talking about, from the male perspective, how a man will be with a woman and he'll have sex with her, and he can be with her and he can love her, but then a woman comes up that offers stability, and he'll leave the sex and the love and actually marry the woman who offers stability. Now, the thing that was confusing to me about that, because I'm like, okay, so when he says stability, what does that mean exactly? I feel like that could be, just in our conversation, I feel like that could be something different for each man. Within the conversation that was on the post, it was like stability and peace will go hand in hand. Everybody says, I don't want you to disrupt my peace. B, don't kill my vibe. B, don't kill my vibe. That kind of thing. Okay, I got it. But how realistic is that? Because disagreements, maybe an occasional argument, I'm not talking about anything real big, just normal. Those things are a part of life, which would disrupt peace. Kind of didn't make sense to me. So I wanted to get like a more in-depth understanding of what exactly does that mean when men are talking about stability and peace when it comes to women. What are y'all talking about?
So the peace aspect, and I'm sure my wife, if she is watching,
because she is.
if she is watching, that aspect really is about, for me at least, peace is about having that tranquility, having that calm, having that shelter that you can come back into and not have to deal with the unnecessary disturbances. Like you said, arguments are going to happen, disagreements are going to happen. All those things happen. But sometimes they don't have to happen unnecessarily.
Right.
One of the things my wife and I had a conversation about recently was, we'll have, well, sometimes it'll be in just general conversation, sometimes we'll be in arguments, but she'll use this phrase with me that says, well, I didn't know if you had considered X. And because I have so many thoughts that are going on at one time, when somebody's like, well, have you considered X? Sometimes I haven't, but in the simpler things I would like to think in life, I have. And so that used to really frustrate me. She's like, have you considered, have you considered, have you considered? So we were having this conversation about like peace. It was not specifically about peace, but it was around peace. And it was like, have you considered the day that I possibly just had? Like it was during this last weekend. And so I literally went because I was ramping down from my previous employer and getting ready for things with the new employer, and had a date night planned with my wife and that she planned, all these different things. So I went from waking up, working a full day's work on the weekend, taking a shower, shaving, going to date night, and then came home. And it was like, I just wanted to just, it was
Yeah.
finally my first moment to myself.
Yeah.
And for my wife, she's like, oh, we're now home, date night. We can kind of like interact with each other more. And for me, I was just like, I just want to be alone. Like, I just want to just chill and play video games. I don't want to really do anything else. Like, and so in talking to her about that, I could feel myself kind of getting like irritated in the sense of like, okay, I just got done working all day. I just went from working all day to spending time with you. We just spent time together yesterday, and now I want this time to do whatever I want to do. And it felt like I was getting pushback on wanting to do that. And and when we talked about it, that's not what she was giving me. She wasn't giving me pushback. She was just like, yo, I was just asking you a question. But it took me back to the thought process of when she's talking to me and she says, have you considered? And so I said, well, have you considered that? Like, I've been working nonstop all day. Like, I didn't eat. I didn't have water down here in the basement. It was just work, 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 work. Take a shower, shave, date, 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 date. Like that was the day. So it's like, have you considered that? And so when I think about like what it means for a man to have peace, it's really about having that intuition of consideration. Like for me, I'm not a person who needs to spend an abundance of time with the person that I'm with. I actually like my own solitude time and other activities apart, because to me, that makes our time together more special. But my wife, her love language is quality time. So I have to like try to like balancing act this this experience of being a husband to somebody whose love language is quality time, and still loving myself enough to give me the individual time that I need so that I can be present in that quality time.
Right.
And so the peace aspect is twofold, is that sometimes there's unnecessary disagreements, unnecessary conversations in, not that the conversation, I don't want to say the conversation is unnecessary, unnecessary, necessary conversations that are held at unnecessary times. And that is where the peace comes in. We understand that there's going to be conflict. We live in a world of conflict. We understand that because we experience conflict every day.
Yeah.
I experience conflict every day. There's not a day that I don't experience it.
Yeah.
But the necessity of that conflict when it comes to the partner that you choose to marry or the person you choose to spend your life with, now all of a sudden the reason why a man, at least I believe, would choose to leave love and sex to find that stability is because, not that love and sex are the end all be all, but I can kind of live without as much love and without as much sex if I know that I'm going to have peace.
Come
If I
on.
know, and that's the stability aspect of it. It's no different than a building that's standing. A building that's standing that has a really good foundation, it's stable whether the ground is shaking or not. But when you have the ground shaking while you're trying to build, you're not going to get a peg in the ground straight to save your life. And so by the time the ground is even standing still, your building is all half cocked to this way, and now it's ready to fall over.
Yeah.
So that's what I though I don't think the article or the post articulated it
No.
clearly. It was just like, he'll leave you for stability. Well, that sounds very homosexual of you to like
there
that's
you go with that
you
again.
leave it, you leave it because you ain't got a place to stay. Like that's
Homosexual.
so but
Oh my God.
from the aspect of stability, it's like, if I can find peace, I love my wife dearly, dearly, but I could not picture a relationship that I would stay in, this one or anyone otherwise, where every day I come home, my peace is disrupted further than what it's already been disrupted by having to leave the home. My peace is disrupted further every single day. It would be like, it'd be like being behind a fortified wall in a fortress, and there is constant attack 24/7.
Yeah,
The
no.
only thing keeping you safe is the walls that you have up. And in a marriage specifically, walls are not congruent with a quality relationship.
Absolutely.
So I hope that explains it.
No, that really did. They should have had you.
No, I don't do relationship stuff.
So you say. We ain't gonna talk about that whole panel discussion. They ain't got nothing to do with that.
Nothing doing me.
No, but I appreciate that. I thought that, I felt like there was something missing. It's not that I didn't disagree with the concept. It's just that the way it was written, it was so broad. There needed to be some specificity to make it make sense. And you definitely did do that. So see, that was that. All right. So next up, you know that we always do the coach's playbook. See, you gonna stop doubting me. Okay. That's what you're gonna stop doing. Okay. Can't stand him.
Oh, that's funny.
All right. So we like to go over the coach's playbook and add a couple tools that we can leave you guys with that we're hoping that you might find helpful. Coach's playbook tool number 1 is fear serves a purpose. Listen, I know a lot of you out there watching, you're like, I don't know about that. Doesn't feel like it. Well, of course it doesn't feel like it, but we can find the purpose for fear when we make the choice to walk through it. When we make the choice to challenge ourselves to find which corridor of our being can be opened by finding out what's on the other side of our fear. So, the only way you're going to find how your fear serves you is to be up for the challenge to go through it. And guess what? You don't have to go alone. I am going to say it again because I think it's so very important. And if I hadn't have done it for myself, I wouldn't be able to say this, but community is everything. And I'm not talking about family. I'm talking about community of like-minded people that you can sometimes bounce some of the things. Maybe even if you have a fear about how to move in a certain situation, speaking to somebody who's on the same journey or understands mindset frequency that you're on, they may even be able to give you some tools that they've used to navigate some of that. So just understand that there's greatness on the other side of fear that you were born to tap into. So, you just got to choose to. You don't have to. You can consider being about that life. Coach's tool number 2. Either way, fear will bear fruit. I love this, Billy. Listen, we can either choose or the choice is going to be made for us when we don't choose. So I love that point. But yes, either way, fear will always bear fruit. You get to choose whether or not that fruit is going to be something succulent and savory, more than what you had before, or it's going to be kind of tainted and rotten. And making the choice and choosing your fruit is better than just leaving it to chance and life choosing what kind of fruit your situation is going to bear for you. And finally, tool number 3 is speak your truth in the face of fear. What we see will be. And if you see it, that doesn't mean that the journey to it is going to be one that is without obstacles, that's without challenges, ones that are things that are perceived failures. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the vision, the goal, the journey is bigger than any of the things, the stumbling blocks along the way. Just stay focused on the big picture and invest your time and energy in believing it. And I have to say this, sometimes seeing doesn't immediately become believing. Sometimes believing is a practice. Yes, a practice. The best way to get connected to believing what you see is to practice that you believe it. It could be just something as simple as not only sharing with community, but telling yourself what you want to be true, even when you don't believe it. Think about all of the things that we fear that we say over and over again. If you fear being broke, if you fear being single, if you fear anything, those things we tend to repeat over and over again. We manifest over and over again in our life. We'll have periods, long periods of being single because you've been saying for 10 years you're going to be single. You have
Right.
long periods of being broke. So we manifest a lot of what we don't want, but we don't understand that manifestation works in the exact same way. We feed those fears by repeating them over and over again in our mind. And when you repeat them over and over again in your mind, then you tend to make movements in your life that support that belief.
Right.
In the same way, feed your mind what you want to believe, and not only just in your mind, surround yourself with your environment. Play music that feeds what you want to believe, read things that feeds what you want to believe, watch videos that feeds things that you want to believe. Choose your programming based on what it is that you want to be. So spending that same type of time on what you want to see and coming to a space of believing it is going to yield the same kind of fruit that it does if you're feeding your mind some things that you fear or you don't want to believe. All right? All right. That's
I
it. That's it. But not just yet. So you're going to be a believer tonight.
I got you. I'm following you. I'm following what you're laying down tonight.
That's how you do eyebrows moving and stuff. Don't play me. But anyway, if you like tonight, it's not over. Oh, no, no, no. The Wednesday word is coming up tomorrow, and you don't want to miss it. That's going to be at 6:30 Pacific. That's going to be at 9:30 Eastern. You got to check out First Row on YouTube. Listen, over 200 videos there of content, and every Wednesday you get that Wednesday word, and it is definitely something that you are not going to want to miss. Always some nuggets there that you can take with you. But then the week is still not done yet. No, 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 no. You got to catch me, the Grind to Find podcast, every Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. Fresh episodes all the time. You can catch me at thegrinddefined.com as well as any major platform where podcasts are found. Whoa, what a show. It's been a lot of fun. Oh, wait, there's more. Your book. We have to talk about that. Fire your job, hire your passion. National bestseller. First time out the gate. You can catch it at www.thefirstrow.com. And guess what? If you haven't gotten a taste of this book yet, you really need to get your life. So we're going to let you do that by downloading the first chapter free of charge. It's complimentary. Once you get that first chapter, you're going to have the book. You're going to have the meaty journal, and you're going to have to become a part of the conversations that we are going to be having. So that is it for tonight. We're so happy that you tuned in with us this Tuesday. You got to come back next Tuesday because we do this every week. In the meantime, in between time, go about your week making sure that fear is nothing, because you're going to have some fruit that you're going to determine in your life. All right. Until next time, we're out. Peace.
Peace.